Thank you for making your time and joining. And so again, we start with a short breathing meditations to quiet your mind. Again, just relax. Make yourself as comfortable as possible. Feel the weight of your body on the cushions, chair. And just as you breathe in and out, just be mindful and aware. As you breathe in, being aware you are breathing in. As you breathe out, being aware you are breathing out. So simply just watching mindfully and being aware. And we can try to generate good intention by thinking how fortunate and lucky we are to have this precious human life. Met the Dharma. And have gathered all the conditions to practice the Dharma. So therefore it would be great lost if our life come to end without having to practice much. Therefore, I must utilize this great opportunity to practice as much as possible. So that we can generate renunciation, bodhichitta, wisdom realizing emptiness, if possible. If not, at least we have some imprint that make us much more easier in the future. In the purpose of practicing Dharma, the purpose of cultivating three principal aspects of path, is to be greatest help and benefit to oneself and all sentient beings. That is the only purpose. And may us coming here together and trying to listen, engage in discussion, reflection, contemplation, may all of these become cause and condition to actualize our own highest potential, fully awakened today. So we can help to liberate all sentient beings from all their suffering, cause of suffering, so that we can be able to help them to achieve ultimate happiness from our direct experience. And everything that we do through our body, speech, and mind, until we achieve enlightenment, especially this life, this year, this month, this week, particularly today, may all become help and benefit to all, to other sentient beings. May they never become cause of suffering, pain to anyone. Okay. Yeah. The Guru is Buddha, the Guru is Dharma, the Guru is Sangha also. The Guru is the creator of all happiness. To all Gurus, I go for it. Lama Sangye Lama Chöte Shin Lama Yen Den Wen Ki Che Po Lama Ni Lama Nan La Kya Su Chin Lama Sangye Lama Chöte Shin Lama Yen Den Wen Ki Che Po Lama Ni Lama Nan La Kya Su Chin. With the thought desiring to liberate my greater beings, I always go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha until the heart of enlightenment is achieved with the perseverance, acting with wisdom and compassion and with loving kindness in the eyes of the Buddhas for the benefit of all sentient beings. I generate the thought of full enlightenment. 사시베게 조심해도 다리라레제 니데게 바데 상계신도 미데우아이 도근 나마다신 the object of my attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, strangers, in my body, wealth, and enjoyment, Without any sense of loss, I offer this college. Please accept it with the pleasure and bless me with the freedom from the three poisons. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Vaniyataya. So far we discussed about by letting go of attachment to this life and future and cultivating the renunciations and aspiring for liberation from the samsara. And with that renunciations, by understanding how samsara is, miserable and unbearable, being in samsara, there's no freedom from the sufferings, even for a moment. With our own understanding of that, then we also understand anyone who is in samsara, anyone who is the prisoner of the delusions and the karma, they are also experiencing, just like ourselves, miserable, unbearable sufferings all the time. And with their understanding and feeling, then we generate the Bodhichitta mind to liberate all those sentient beings from all their suffering and cause of suffering, and lead them to not only temporary happiness, but ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment. And in order to do that, then we ourselves first need to be able to guide them in directly with our own direct experience. Then we ourselves need to achieve that fully enlightenment, and then cultivating the wish to actualize that fully enlightened state. So the mind wishing for enlightenment, the Bodhichitta mind, so generating the Bodhichitta mind. And and once you generate Bodhichitta mind, then it gives you temporary happiness, peace. It leads you to ultimate happiness and peace. Once you have Bodhichitta, it fulfills your needs. Also, it helps and fulfill others' needs and well-beings. And so I think more or less we kind of discuss up to that and how to cultivate that Bodhichitta mind. And today, then, from the three principal aspects of the path, the right view, the wisdom realizing the right view. So the right view to ultimate reality or nature. So again, this has, why we need to cultivate that right view, or the wisdom realizing that right view, and then establishing the right view, and then definition or the measurement when we have the correct realization or correct understanding of the right view. So so the first, why we need to, the reasons and the why we need to cultivate the right view. So then in that, the reason to meditate on right view. So the reason to cultivate the wisdom, realizing the right view, having meditated on the right view. So without the wisdom realizing the ultimate reality, So which is the right view, Even though you have generated renunciation and mind of enlightenment, the Bodhichitta, as described earlier, one cannot cut the root of cycling. Therefore, attempt the method to realize dependent arising. So, even if we have generated and cultivated the renunciation and bodhicitta, which are the part of the method, practice of the method, and even though those both are extremely powerful realizations and state of mind that can, make our life much more purposeful, meaningful, peaceful, happier, as well as we can be much more benefit and help to others. But still, if we don't have the wisdom realizing the right view, ultimate reality, then, just by the renunciation bodhicitta, it cannot cut the very root of the samsara, and that is the fundamental ignorance. The fundamental ignorance, the self-grasping ignorance. And without destroying the very root of the samsara, the fundamental ignorance, the self-grasping, then, you can never free yourself from the samsara. And without cutting that, you cannot overcome all the afflictive emotions, which are rooted in that fundamental ignorance. And without cutting destroying all those afflictive emotions, then there is no way to achieve enlightenment. And without achieving the fully enlightenment, then we cannot be as much help and benefit to others in the most profound way. And so therefore, in order to cut and destroy the obscurations, whether it's afflictive obscuration or afflictive emotion or obscuration of the knowledge, in order to destroy and cleanse and purify them, cultivating the wisdom realizing the ultimate reality is must. Without that, it's not possible. As one of the great Indian masters, Dharmakirti, say in his, in Pramanaga Vadika, he says, in order to destroy that fundamental ignorance, you need to cultivate a mind that can contradict that ignorance, the apprehension of that ignorance. And so Bodhichitta mind does not contradict the way ignorance apprehends the objects. The ignorance, the way ignorance grasps or apprehends the objects is inherently or independently truly existence. So you need another mind that relies non-inherently existent, non-truly existence, non-independent existence. And when you have that mind, then it contradicts the other mind, and then you can kind of cut that mind completely. Otherwise, with a loving kindness, compassions, it can distract that mind, but it cannot destroy from the very root. It is like, you see the, what do you call, crow scare or scarecrow in the field, from distance, it might look like a being, another human beings, especially if it's not so with the lightning not so clear and from the distant, and then maybe, on the basis of believing that there is a human being, then you could have different emotions, good, bad, you know. Mm. So, so in order to destroy that misunderstanding of that, of misperception or misunderstanding of that cross scare as being a human beings, then you need to be able to understand that it is not a human being, but it is a scarecrow, whether by being closer to it or by, maybe have more light using the flashlight, whatever, if it's not clear. And then once you understand that, then there is no more misunderstanding of that it is a human beings. On the basis of misunderstanding, then you wouldn't have all other emotion arising that, And so destroy that, you have to have the mind which understand it is totally mistaken, and that is not the real, how your mind perceived was totally mistaken. And so therefore, just the Bodhichitta, the method itself is not enough to destroy that fundamental ignorance, the root of all the samsara. That's why one need to cultivate that wisdom, and therefore, that is why the importance of both method and wisdom, in one of the sutras, Buddha said, compassion without wisdom is bondage. Compassion with wisdom is liberations. Wisdom without compassion is bondage. Wisdom with compassion is liberations. So in that, Buddha clearly mentioned the importance of the needs of the both wisdom and the method. Similarly, Chandrakiri in his middle way, he explained same thing, in order to fly over the ocean of the samsara to the shore of the liberations, then we need to fly with the two wings of wisdom and the compassions. If one of those wings is missing, you will not be able to fly over the ocean of samsara to the shore of the fully enlightenment. And so both wings, the wings of wisdom and the method, is necessary, and even in our, I think, even with our small example in our, not talking about the wisdom of emptiness, but in general, the importance of both compassion and wisdom to be more help and benefit to others, Sometimes even you have the wisdom, if you don't have compassion, you will not reach out to others and help them. Even you have the wisdom, even you know how to help and solve the problem, if you don't have the compassion, you will not reach out and help to solve the problem or reduce the sufferings. But sometimes we have compassion, we want to help, we want to reduce, solve their problems, but then we don't have wisdom to how to do it. So then we are unable to help. So it is not, sometimes due to lack of compassion, we are unable to help others. Sometimes when we have the compassion, but we don't have the wisdom, the lack of wisdom, we are unable to help. And so to be help and benefit to others as well as oneself, we need both the wisdom and the compassion. Same for ourselves, just like others. We need to be compassionate for ourselves, as well as we need the wisdom to take care of ourselves. And so the importance of that. So yeah. Okay. So in that, then at the end, there's therefore attempt the method to realize dependent arisings. So therefore, in order to realize the ultimate truth, the right view, in order to have a correct understanding, realizations of the right view or ultimate truth or ultimate reality, then we should, here Lama Tsongkhapa, attempt the method to realize dependent arising. Here he didn't say, therefore attempt the method to realize emptiness, but he used dependent arising here, and it is a there is a important points here, Lama Tsongkhapa making here. So trying to understand the ultimate truth, reality, through the point view of dependent arisings. So there is, in order to understand and realize the ultimate truth or ultimate reality, the right view, from many different reasoning, logics, from many different analysis, examinations, contemplation, one can have that understanding, realization. But here, Lama Tsongkhapa explaining from the point of view of dependent arising, realizing the ultimate reality, the right view from the point of view of, from the reasoning, logics, from the point of view of dependent arising. So here, if we can understand the ultimate reality from the point of view of dependent arising, then one will not fall into one of the extreme of nihilism. Because when someone tries to meditate on emptiness, the ultimate reality, sometimes, there is a possibility that we can fall into one of the extreme, then feeling there is nothing, and when it lead to that kind of conclusions that there is nothing, then then there is we can fall into the extreme of nihilism. And in order to find the ultimate reality, we have to find a middle way, free from either of the extreme. And if you fall into the middle nihilism, then you fall into one extreme, you are unable to find the middle way. If you can't find the middle way, then you cannot have the correct realizations of the ultimate reality. And so therefore, okay, so that's so before the next verse showing the right view or establishing the right view, before we go that, maybe again, because the way to understand the right view is through the dependent arising. So maybe we talk a little bit about dependent arising. The way we understand dependent arisings, whether it's the self, whether it's the aggregate of the self, our body, our mind, or whether it's all other conditioned phenomena, all other conditioned phenomena, they all are dependent arisings because they all depend on its preceding cause and conditions. All of these conditioned phenomena, impermanent phenomena, they cannot exist, without depending on its cause and conditions. Same with, so all starting with the self and our aggregates and all other conditioned phenomena, they all are dependent arisings. And that kind of understanding of dependent arisings, all the different Buddhist school of thought, they all agree on that. They all have same understanding, okay? All the four Buddhist school of thought, they all have same understanding when it comes to this, that all conditions, impermanent phenomena are dependent arising because they depend on its cause and conditions. Then, not only they are dependent on its cause and conditions, the Mahayana school of thoughts, like Mind Valley School and Middle Way schools, then they say not only they are dependent on the cause and condition, they are dependent arising because all the phenomena are dependent on its parts, whether it's a direction, whether it's a material or non, whether it's matter or non-matter, but they all depend on its parts. Some of them directional parts, some of them continuation part, but they all depend on its part. Without its part, the object cannot exist. So, for example, in our just self, if we take away the parts of who we are, our physical aggregates, our feelings, our discriminating mind, our compositional factors, aggregates, and consciousness aggregate, then there is no self. There is no self. So it depends on those aggregates, its parts. The aggregate themselves, physical aggregate, so-called my body, it depends on its all other parts, my head, my legs, hands, shoulders, or organs, all of that. If you take each of those parts away, there's no body. And again, each of those others, and you do that same, and they all same, and mind is, if we talk about the mind itself, whether it's feeling, discrimination, mind, or compositional factors, or whether it's consciousness, primary consciousness, again, they all are, made of many continuum, one moment of one consciousness is made of many parts of continuum. And if you take each of those continuum parts, then there is no that particular consciousness. There is no more that. Just like when you take the, each part of the body, there is no more body. Similarly, same way consciousness. And so they all are dependent on its parts. And that is same with all other phenomena. So they are dependent arisings because they can only exist by depending on its parts, So that is the Mahayana school of thoughts. Some of the like Bhavasika school of thoughts, they believe there is a kind of the ultimate consciousness and physical matters that is partless, But in Mahayana school of thought, there's nothing that is partless, Everything has its parts, and everything exists by depending on its parts. So that's dependent arisings. And then, the Madhyamikas, the Mind Valley schools, not only so, they said they are not all these condition phenomena, not only dependent on the cause and conditions, but they are also dependent on its parts. Not only that, they are also dependent on the consciousness, the mind, that designate on the basis of based on the putting together or collections of the basis, and so in case of the self, there is an aggregate, our aggregates, our body, our feelings, emotions, our different discriminating minds, and compositional other mental factors, and primary consciousness. So all these aggregates come together, what make ourselves. On the basis of those aggregates coming together, there is certain functioning. And then, there is the mind that label on the basis of my aggregate as a Geshe Sherab, as a me, and on the basis of that, then that is how the Geshe Sherab exists. The Geshe Sherab exists by coming together of the basis, the aggregates, collection, or coming together or collections of those aggregate, and on the basis of that, then there is the mind that designate, that label as an aggregate, as a Geshe Sherab. And so that is how Geshe Sherab exists, and same with our body, Different parts of the body come together in a certain function, and then the mind level, this is the body. And that is how the body exists. And that is same with the consciousness and all other phenomena. So it's dependent on the basis for whatever is being imputed, and then the mind that impute as it is. And therefore is a dependent arising, because it depends on the mind that impute on that basis. Then prasangika, so you see the understanding dependent arising get more and more subtle, All Buddhist school have understand dependent arising as a dependent cause and condition. Then Mind Holy School and the middle way, they have not only that, but they have also understanding of depending on its parts. And then, the Madhyamika, then depending on mind that impute it. Then when you come to prasangika, then they not only, they not only say that is dependent on imputed, but then they say is all things is, everything is mutually imputed, or mutually dependent arising. Mutually dependent arising is what it means is without object, there's no subject. Without subject, there's no objects. So they depend on each other. If there's no subject, there's no objects. To be an object, there should be subject that precedes the object. So without the subject, there's no objects. Without object, there's no subjects, because subject means, there is an object to be perceived. So they are mutually dependent. So therefore, the object cannot exist by itself. Without depending on subject, the subject cannot exist by itself without depending on the objects. And that is, same with of, because it is a little bit more subtle than others, because Sotandrika middle way schools, there is the objects and there is the subject mind that impute it. So there is kind of two together. But here, in prasangika, there's nothing objectively. you know. Mm, mm. There is object only because there is subject. Only because there is subjects. Without subjects, without depending on subject, the object cannot exist by itself. Not only the object is the other way true, the subject. So when we think that, then it feels like subject is more powerful, isn't it? When we say objects exist by depending on subjects, it feels like subject is the more powerful one. But then they say is neither. Also, the subject cannot exist without depending on the objects. The subject can, because it cannot be subject if there's no object. To be that subject, you need to perceive something. And to perceive something, there need to be objects. And so there is no subject without objects. So they are mutually dependent arising. And it's the same, us and others, me and you, there and here. There's nothing there by itself. There is there because there is here. And in relation, because depending on here is there. Because there is there, depending on there is here. That side of the mountain, this side of the mountain. If there is no that side of the mountain, you can't say this is this side of the mountain. This side of the mountain depend on that side of the mountain. That side of the mountain depend on this side of the mountain to perceive that as that side of the mountain, this as this. So they are mutually dependent arising in that. Same, everything's good, bad, beneficial, non-beneficials, big, small, they're all. If there is no big, we cannot talk something as a small. We cannot talk something as a small if there is no big. So the concept, the idea, the self, the small is dependent on the big is dependent on small, So mutually dependent arising. If there's no small, there's no big. If there's no big, there's no small. If there's no good, we cannot talk about something bad. So bad exists independent on good. Good exists independent on bad. So they are mutually, dependent arisings. So therefore, there's nothing that exists by itself. Absolutely. The problem is, in our mind, when we see things, it appears as absolute and we grasp as absolute. Or you see something good, or that is absolute good. That is why we get so strongly attached to it. That is why I strongly grasp to it, because there's a sense of, goodness from its own side, by itself, from itself, independently by itself, absolute goodness. And that is when we have strong attachment. On the other hand, something appears as bad, and then there is not only appearing as a bad, there is a sense of appearing bad by itself. Bad by itself. And absolute bad, and then not only there's appearance, our mind follow that, and then grabs it to be absolutely bad by itself, and then we have strong aversions, strong disliking, strong aversions. And that is where we get in then attachment, anger, all this arises due to that strong liking, or disliking, and all this strong feeling of disliking and liking arises because there's strong you know, apprehension or something to be bad by itself, or by absolutely bad, or there's something good by itself and absolute good. That is the problem. On the other hand, if we realize there's nothing goodness from its own side, there's nothing badness from its own side, there's nothing good absolutely, there's nothing absolutely bad, then, you know, we wouldn't have that strong feeling of liking or disliking so strongly. And if we don't have that strong feeling of liking or disliking strongly, then we don't have strong aversions and strong attachments. And then we don't have to suffer so much due to the attachment and anchor. That is why we get, you know, that is why we get, you know, troubles. You know, someone says bad, one say, and we believe when someone is saying bad, absolute bad from its own side by itself, and then someone says good, and they think and they believe is good, you know, by itself, absolutely, and that is where we have conflict. That is where what you call confrontation comes, you know. Can we be both right? Can we both be right? You know, so that is the key, you know. Can we be both right? Absolutely possible. Absolutely, both can be right. If both are right, then, you know, we don't have to fight so much strongly, you know. Just give you an example, you know. Is this computer good or bad? You know, maybe I want to buy a computer, you know, and it says, is this a good or bad? Is this good enough, bad enough, whatever? And someone say, oh, it's not bad, good. Someone says it's bad, not good. Someone says it's good. There seems contradictions, but can both be right? And there could be both of them right. One is saying it's bad because of from certain point of view, of looking from certain point of view. One saying good because he look from different point of view is good. Maybe the shape is good, color is good. That is what he look from. You know, a certain functioning of this is good. The other ones see certain another form of functioning from that point of view is not good enough. So it all depends on that. So therefore, is neither good or bad by itself. It depends on many other factors. You know, let's say coming and going, because you see quite often in the teachings coming and going when it comes to emptiness, you know, there's no coming, there's no going. So let's discuss about coming and going, you know, in relation to this. You know, I'm walking towards my friend's house. I'm going. My acts that my act of my moving is that going by itself? That act, is that going or is that coming? Is that coming or going by itself? The act itself. I'm making my move, you know, with my feet, one feet and another. Is that act coming or going? It's neither coming, it's neither going. The act itself, by itself. What do you think? It is only going from my point of view. It's coming from my point of my friends who's waiting there. My act has not changed. My feet is moving, but that act itself is neither going, neither coming by itself, but is coming from his point of view. Or someone who is in my house here, from his point of view, I'm going. And both of them are right in their own way. But normally when we think, where I'm going or I'm coming, the sense of, absolute coming and going by itself. We don't realize this idea of coming or going is only relation to some other factors. And that's just one example, and that we can apply that for all other actions, all other activities. And so therefore, very interesting in this, I think the Nagarjuna's point of views, if you really analyze deeply, take enough time, it's really, really very interesting, because most time we feel, whatever object, whatever actions, activities we engage into, we feel like that is by itself, by itself, instead of understanding that can be that act or whatever that object only in relation to some other factors. Only in relation to some other factors. Therefore, being a dependent arising by depending on other factors. Without depending on other factors, is neither coming, is neither going. Do you get it? Without other factor, is neither coming, is neither going. If you stop looking from that person's perspective, my friend's house, if you stop looking from my house or my friend who's looking at me going that way, if we don't look from that perspective either, then it's neither coming, it's neither going. It's only coming from that perspective by depending on that other factors, and it is only going from this perspective, from these factors, and that is same with that we can apply that to all others, and so. Mm. Even when you're eating, sometimes when you think of eating, I don't know, now I've never thought about this one, but it just came now as we are discussing, coming, going, I've been thinking, because I like to walk and I started, do different way of thinking, and then, something just came like that, and it really came to have better understanding of when you say there's no coming, going, what it kind of means, mm, you are eating, and and you are full, and you don't want to throw the leftover, so you feel guilty of throwing it, so you keep on eating even though you are kind of full. Okay, is it eating or is it throwing? Is it eating or is it throwing? Just as we throw in the garbage. Again, it could be both. It could be both. Again, it is from what perspective, from what factor you look on. Hmm? If you look from that, because the purpose of eating is to kind of satisfy your hunger and nutritions, whatever that is, for your body nutritions, and also to fulfill the hunger. But once you have done that, it's just like throwing in the garbage in a way. It's no more nutrition. It probably doesn't need, it's too much there, and you are already fulfill your hunger, so it doesn't fulfill that, and so after that, so again, independent on that, from that perspective, is it throwing? From another perspective, then is eating. So what is the act that itself? Is this eating? Is this a throwing? So I think, anyway, it's interesting to that kind of okay, compositing. I think I like that one more than throwing. Compositing. Oh, that is even better, I think. Yeah, or feeding the bugs inside. So it's interesting when you really look from that perspective. All of those are very, nothing exists by itself. They all exist only on the basis of other factors, by depending on others. By depending on other factors, and therefore all of them are relative. Nothing is absolute. Nothing is absolute. They all are relative. The only problem is not realizing that. We don't realize they're relative and they are not absolute. They are dependent arising. They don't exist by themselves, by itself. And so therefore we cling and we grasp as those objects existing by itself. And then we have strong, then we have strong grasping to it. And then that is the problem. But once we understand, it's a dependent arising. It's a dependent arising. All phenomena, all objects, the self, the aggregates, and all other phenomena are dependent arisings. Then, we understand, nothing exists independently by itself without depending on other factors. So that understanding of dependent arising help us to understand things does not exist by itself or by themselves without depending on other factors. And so therefore that helps us to understand the ultimate reality, ultimate truth. And so that is where Lama Tsongkhapa says, in order to understand the ultimate truth, ultimate reality, then attain the method to realize the dependent arisings. Because if you understand the dependent arisings from that level, then it will help us to understand the object does not exist by itself, by themselves or itself. And therefore, they cannot exist ultimately, absolutely, you know. So, yeah. So then the next verse, 10. One who sees the cause and effect of all phenomena, of both cyclic existence and state beyond sorrow, as forever unbetraying, and for whom any object trusted in by the grasping mind has been completely disappeared, has at that time entered the path pleasing the Buddha. So any beings, through meditation practice, who is able to see, dependent arising, when you understand dependent arising, then, due to a certain cause, certain result is produced. The law of cause and effect, when you engage in particular cause, then it produces particular result, and that is unmistaken, unfallible, unbetrayed, that is the fact, reality, So within the samsara, due to the ignorance, then, the actions, due to the actions, then karmic seed, through action, karmic potential is created, and that potential left within the consciousness. And then at the time of death, activated that karmic seed with a grasping, craving, and then existence through like that, and 12 link, and that is how we get in samsara and how we experience some suffering in the samsara. So that is one level of law of cause and effect, how we get caught up in samsara and how we experience this suffering in the samsara. The law of cause and effect of nirvana is, when you have understanding of emptiness, then you cut the root of the samsara, the ignorance. By cutting the ignorance, you cut the karma, the action created by that ignorance. By cutting that, then there is no more karmic seed left within the consciousness, and then there's no karmic seed to be activated by craving, grasping, and so through that, then how you achieve enlightenment by through the certain cause and conditions, So due to certain cause and conditions, we are led into samsara and experience sufferings. Due to certain cause and conditions, then you are free from the samsara and achieve the nirvana, the happiness of nirvana. So that kind of, while you understand that, once someone is able to see and understand it, that how that functioning of that law of cause and effect, through understand dependent arising of the law of cause and effect of samsara and nirvana. At the same time, when you see that dependent arising, law of cause and effect, and functioning of that, while you see that, at the same time, you are able to destroy, the objects that is being apprehended, the grasping, ignorant mind, and that is, truly existence, or existing by itself, So while you see dependent arising, at the same time, you are able to see non-existence of truly existence. Empty of truly existence. You are able to see, while you see the dependent arising or law of cause and effect, That moment, while you see that, at the same time, you are able to see empty of truly existence, empty of inherent existence, empty of independent existence, empty of existence by itself or themselves from objectively. When you are able to see that, then that is when you have entered the path pleasing the Buddha. That means that is when you have the correct understanding of ultimate truth or right view. And that is the ultimate truth, ultimate reality. The right view is the one that please, realization of that is that please the Buddhas, because the very purpose Buddha achieved enlightenment is to liberate all sentient beings from the samsara. And the very purpose Buddha taught the Dharma is to help to sentient beings to liberate from their samsara. And that is the only reason why Buddha achieved enlightenment, why he taught the Dharma, that. And so when someone is able to cultivate that right view, or the wisdom relies on the ultimate truth, then they have started to liberate themselves from the samsara. And, and so therefore that is the most pleasing for the Buddha, when they see that a sentient beings is starting to free themselves from the samsara by having cultivated that wisdom within them, by destroying the fundamental ignorance by the sword of that wisdom. So that pleased them. So that is the so that is what it means, whom any object trusted in by the grasping mind. So that is ignorance. The grasping mind, the objects, that trusted objects of that grasping mind is truly existing, inherent existence, independent existence, and that has completely disappeared, means, that it's no more there. So when you see the empty of truly existence, the empty of inherent existence, while you see the dependent arising. So when you see that, then that is when one has entered the path pleasing the Buddhas. So in order to understand that, again, I think we discussed a little bit from the point of view of dependent arisings. Then that there are many, if you study Nagarjuna's and Chandragiri's and others writing, and some also you see in the Lamrims, there are different meditations that one can study, learn, different analysis, different reasoning, different logics, in most of the Lamrim, you find the meditation through what they call four essential point of view, and that is one of the, through the practice of, from those four essential point of view, the essential point, identifying the self or the object that is being refuted, negated, identifying that. And that is the one first point, and then the second essential point is, if there is truly existence, then it has to be, if there's truly existence self, then it has to be either inherently existing one with the aggregates or separate from the aggregates. There is no third possibility. So coming to that understanding through meditation with analysis, there's no other third possibility. That's the second point, and then third point is, so since there's no other possibility, there's only two possibilities there. So if it is inherently or truly one with the aggregates, and then there are many faults. So therefore, because there are so many faults, therefore it is not inherently one with the aggregates. Then the other possibility that its only possibility is that it is inherently exists separate. And again, it is truly separate from the aggregates, then there are many other faults, and therefore it is also not truly separate from the aggregates. And if it is neither truly one or truly separate from the aggregates, therefore it can't be, truly existence. And so through that, then coming to a conclusion, understanding there is no truly existing self, and you use the same analyze to all other phenomena, and coming to conclusion, there is no truly or inherently existing any of the object phenomena. And so there is that one kind of analysis that, then there is, another analysis you find in Chandagiri's, the sevenfold analysis of the chariot, using the chariot as the example, and using that, 7 different fold analysis to come to understanding that nothing exists independently by itself, or, in Nagarjuna's another, analysis, whether it exists from by itself, whether it exists from others, whether it exists from both, or whether it exists from neither of them. So there are four different way of analyzing it, And so those are many different way of analyzing. And then again, Nagarjuna's in his Precious Garland, and did another analysis, which Sandeva also explained that in his chapter 9, similar analysis, whether the self with, the earth element, whether it's the fire element, whether it's the water element, whether it's the wind element, whether it's the conscious space element, whether it's the consciousness element. So again, or whether it's the collections of those elements. So again, that kind of analysis. So there are many different way of analyzing, and many different and each of those analyses are the meditations, Each of those analyses are the meditation. You do those different kind of analysis, different kind of investigation, and basically at the end of that analysis, it comes to certain conclusions, and the conclusions is that there is no truly or inherently existing. And once you come to that understanding that, whatever object you are analyzing on that, starting with the self, then your aggregates, the physical aggregate, and then your mental aggregates, and then all other phenomena. When you come to that understanding that is not truly existing, there's nothing that exists from itself, and there's sense of empty, then you try to keep your mind meditating without more analysis, just being in that state of empty. When you have come to a strong conviction after those analyses, strong conviction, strong ascertainment that there is no truly existing at all, there is no truly existing self at all, there's no truly existing body at all, there's no truly existing mind at all, and whatever object, you come to that very strong, after all analysis, absolutely, you are so sure, absolutely so certain, absolutely so, and so when you have that, then you just try to, keep your mind in that state of that empty of that truly existence of that object. And so, and again, you do the repeat again, the analyze, and again come to the same conclusions. Again, try to keep your mind in that state. And so that is how you do the meditations. So then definition of not having completed analysis of the right views, So then, definition of whether you have completed the analysis of the right view or not completed. So here, if the appearance of dependent relations, which is unbetraying, is accepted separately from the emptiness, and as long as they are seen separate, then one has still not realized the Buddha's intent. So in order to, have the realize the Buddha's intent or Nagarjuna's point of view, if we see the dependent arising, the law of cause and effect unbetraying, and emptiness as two separate, then you have still not completed not understood correctly or have the correct realizations, But the moment you see the objects, whatever objects that dependent arising, functioning due to certain cause and conditions, due to certain factors, due to certain other factors, that there's the functioning and of that object. While you are able to see the functioning of that object, while you are able to see the appearance of that object functioning, at the same time you are able to see emptiness. If you cannot see emptiness, when you see dependent arising, you cannot see emptiness. When you see emptiness, you cannot see dependent arising, then you have not, still you have not realized the Buddha's intent, Nagarjuna's intent. And I think sometimes that is what happened to us at the moment. When you meditate on emptiness, you seem to feel there's no truly existence, but then you cannot see the dependent arising in that same moment. And when you try to see dependent arising, it comes because of this cause, conditions, these factors, we cannot see the emptiness. So we seem to see it more separately at the moment, unable to see them at the same time, as a separate. Two things as separate. But when we realize the Buddha's intent, when one realizes the Buddha's intent, then, and when you are completed the analysis, the right view, and when you realize that, then, while you see the emptiness, at the same time, you see the dependent arousing, the functioning of that phenomena. While you see the dependent arising, the functioning of phenomena, at the same time, you are able to see the emptiness. And when you see that, then definitely there is no way you can fall into any of the stream. Because you see emptiness, at the same time, you see dependent arising, so you can't fall into the extreme of nihilism. And when you see the dependent arising, because you see the emptiness, therefore, you cannot fall into the other extreme, the extreme of existence, And so therefore, you are able to find the middle way without falling into one of the extreme. And so therefore, okay. So then the definition having completed, analyzes the right view. If those two realizations, so the two realizations, the emptiness and dependent arisings, or the unbetrayed dependent arising law of cause, So those two realizations are happening simultaneously without alternations. At the moment, even we don't have realization, but even when we meditate, it is alternations, we cannot see both together simultaneously. And so that is, but after, as we meditate, as we practice with the time, then you are, able to see them simultaneously without alternations. From merely seeing dependent relation as complete unbetraying, the definite ascertainment come to the complete, that completely destroy the way all objects are apprehended as truly existing. At that time, the analysis of ultimate view is complete. So as mentioned before, just by merely seeing the dependent arising or the appearance, you are able to destroy the grasping of truly existence by seeing empty of truly existence. It destroy the grasping of truly existence by seeing non-truly existence. At the moment, for us, when you see the dependent arisings, we see, instead of seeing emptiness, we see it something as independent existence, truly existing seed giving rise to truly existing result. That is how we see at the moment. We see dependent arising in a dependent cause and conditions. We see, we plant the seed, in the garden when you're trying to plant the flowers or vegetable, and then after you put water and all things, after some time, the vegetable grows, the plant grows, the flower grows, and we see dependent arising there, isn't it? It's not so complicating. But the problem is why we see that dependent arising, still there is a grasping the seed to be true, inherently existing seed, producing inherently existing flower, inherently existing fruit. So we see the dependent arising, but we cannot see the emptiness at the moment, And so, but with the time, practice and meditation, then there come to a time when you are able to see, when you see that dependent arising, just merely by seeing dependent arising, just merely by seeing the functioning law of cause and effect, just by seeing that itself, then, you see non-existent truly existence or empty of truly existence. Just by that set, you see the empty of truly existence. And when you see that, then that is when, simultaneously, you see the both of them simultaneously. And then that is when one has completed the analysis of ultimate view is complete, and correctly understood and correctly realized. And then particular special quality of Prasangya view, furthermore, appearance eliminate the extreme of existence, emptiness eliminate the extreme of non-existence. So normally in other school of thought, the appearance eliminate the extreme of non-existence, and emptiness eliminate the extreme of the existence. But here in Prasangya, it is the other way around, and it is the special appearance eliminate the extreme of existence. The extreme of existence is seeing thing to exist inherently, that is the extreme of existence. Seeing thing to exist inherently or truly existence, that is the extreme of existence. And of course, extreme of non-existence and nihilism, when you think there's nothing exists, So appearance eliminate the extreme of existence is because when in Prasangya point of view, when it's appearance, because it's a dependent arising, When you understand dependent arising, you understand, nothing exists independently. Okay? When you have understanding of dependent arising, then you understand nothing exists independently, therefore nothing exists inherently. And so therefore, the grasping of inherent existence, the extreme of existence will be destroyed. The emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. When you understand emptiness, you understand empty of, independent existence. When you understand emptiness, you understand the object to empty of inherent existence or independent existence. And when you understand is empty of independent existence, you understand is a dependent arising. And since you understand is a dependent arising, therefore you don't believe there is non-existence. So it eliminates the extreme of non-existence because it's dependent arising. And if you realize how emptiness manifests in a manner of cause and effect, and then you are not captivated with the wrong notion, holding extreme views, So, and then next one, I think because of time. In this way, you realize exactly the vital point of three principal aspects of the path. Resort to seeking solitude, generate the power of effort, and quickly accomplish final goal, my child. So that was the advice Lama Tsongkhapa gave directly to his cousin, his nephew who requested, and then of course repeating to everyone. So once we have first we need to study, and once you have some understanding through studies, then we need to meditate and contemplate, by finding the right place, right environment, and then we need to put effort in our practice. And by putting effort and a continued consistent practice, then, by cultivating three principal aspects of the path, then one can achieve the final, the ultimate goal of fully enlightenment, and then accomplish the purpose of others and oneself. And so that is, okay, so maybe what I find it difficult to hold both at the same time. Yeah, I think at the moment we cannot hold at the both time at this point. It's definitely difficult, But at the moment, at the very beginning, either we try to meditate on dependent arising first, and then try to do the emptiness later, or sometimes we do the emptiness first and then dependent arising later. Most of the personal advices and teachings by the lamas and teachers, they say first you try to do the emptiness, you meditate on emptiness, and then at the end of the emptiness, then you say, even though they are not truly existing, but they exist by depending on other factors, then you do the dependent arising. So first you do the emptiness and then dependent arisings. So it is like when you do the emptiness, you are meditating how it does not exist. And when you meditate on dependent arising, then you are meditating how it exists. Do you get it? It's same thing. How it does not exist and how it exists. We are trying to understand the same objects, the reality of the same objects. And in order to understand the reality of the same objects, we can look from how it does not exist and how it exists. So emptiness is looking from how it does not exist. And dependent arising, looking from how it exists.
That's actually incredibly helpful, Geshe. Thank you to say it like that. I hadn't heard it put that way before.
Can I have a question for Geshe, Jim Hagen?
Oh, no, you can't. I think Can you ask
All
that
right.
next slide?
I hope so. I hope I can ask you in my next life.
Please.
My question, Geshe, is for the monks and the nuns, the Sangha, they have an advantage, many advantages. But when it comes to like having the correct understanding of emptiness, they debate and they talk, and if you have the wrong view of that during debate, your view will be corrected. For a layperson, when you're not in that environment, instead of, you want to make sure that you have the right understanding of emptiness and dependent origination, rather than spending, weeks, months, years meditating on an incorrect view. How would you, or what would you recommend? Like, how would a layperson speak with a lama, or how would that person find out that their view is sound, it's correct?
Yeah. Well, I think, of course, one can do, of course, if there's access to the teachers, lamas, teachers that you can kind of trust, then definitely, if there is any doubt, any unclarity, any confusions, or need to be more clear, you can always go and ask and, share and discuss, even you do not have, of course, nowadays there's a lot of, books, teachings, not only from the classical point of view, but also recent commentary by different great teachers, reading them, and also sharing and discussing among the Sangha members, especially those who have studied and practiced over the years. So again, you can share with them how you feel, what is your understanding, and what their understanding, whether they have the same understanding, whether they share it or not. So again, even it is not in a like formal debate like in the monastery, but definitely that kind of discussion help. Sometime, which we thought we understood, maybe they share something, and then we thought, oh, maybe I have to think about it, something I need to think about it, reflect. So sometimes sharing with other Sanghas, especially those who already have studied and learned and practiced over time, then sharing with and then of course, if there is any opportunity to ask and to be able to get more clarity from teachers, who has a better understanding properly, then you can also request and discuss with them too. So so yeah, I think maybe that's all. Even you don't have formal debate, but you can still share with the Sangha members, discuss your own understanding, your own meditations, and how they understand, how they do the meditations, and just sharing and see whether you are on the same page or not. If you are not on the same page, whether that Sangha, or whether you are in some maybe, and if you cannot find a clarity after that, then you can ask someone whether that confusions could be cleared by another teachers, another lamas, where you have access. Yeah.
Geshe, there's a question from Wendy. She says, on the path towards enlightenment, does one need to realize the three principal aspects in sequence? Realize renunciation first, then bodhicitta?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Emma also had her hand raised. So.
Generally, that is the sequences, but at the same time, it doesn't mean one should not meditate on bodhicitta until you have realization of renunciations. Okay. I think one can meditate on all of them, maybe at the very beginning, maybe focus more on renunciations, but at the same time, you can meditate on all three, And even though in terms of realizations, one, is, for example, within the bodhisattvas, there are two approaches. Some of bodhisattvas have realization of emptiness first. Some of bodhisattvas has realization of bodhicitta first. So normally, they're called sharp faculty bodhisattvas. They have understanding of emptiness first, and then bodhicitta. Less sharp faculty bodhisattva first, they have realization of bodhicitta, and then they have realization of emptiness later. So therefore, in terms of the realization, the sequence between the bodhicitta and emptiness is not always like this. This is more the, so different, and it could be different because some, yeah, so maybe then again, I might go too much, So that is so so it is not always that sequence, it can be especially the wisdom and the bodhicitta, the sequence can be either way, in terms of the bodhicitta, renunciation bodhicitta, definitely, if we have renunciation, then definitely it will be much more easy to feel bodhicitta to each and every sentient beings, Otherwise, we can feel compassion and loving kindness for those who are really suffering, grossly, but those who are not, doesn't seem to be experiencing more strongly, then it is hard to feel compassion. But if we have that kind of renunciation, as we discussed before, then you can feel compassion and bodhicitta for all. So therefore, having a realization of renouncing definitely help the bodhicitta. But it is not also is possible, bodhicitta can also help to do for the practice of renunciation as well, because if I contemplate on more pain and suffering of more other sentient beings, more I feel that, the more I feel samsara is miserable. Even I'm not experiencing myself that way. Do you get it? For example, maybe I might not be experiencing myself relationship problem. I might not be experiencing myself depressions and all other problem. But when I hear and when I see and people experiencing all these painful different experiences, sufferings, then it just show, just because I'm not experiencing at the moment, that doesn't mean it is not there. That's the nature of suffering. Is such, the samsara is such full of pain, full of samsara, so it helped to understand the nature of samsara being suffering through understanding others' suffering and pain. And when you meditate on others' pain and suffering, so it can support each other's. But in generally, that is how it is. And that is same with Lamrim, because even though we start with Guru devotions and precious human rebirth and so forth, but also when you have realizations of bodhicitta or emptiness, that could also help to support the Guru devotions. Because once you have that realization, your life changes, your experience changes, and you are very appreciative of that. And because we're able to have that realization because of the kindness of our teachers who provide us those instructions and teachings. And so you feel very appreciative of them, and you have a strong devotion to that increase even more. So therefore, it so like that way. Yeah.
Emma, why don't you go, since you had your hand up, and then we'll do Kurt, who has something in the chat. Go ahead, Emma.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much, Geshe. You spoke a little bit about this, but I'm wondering if you could say a bit more about how we should practice if we do find ourselves falling into the extreme of nihilism. And sometimes it can feel difficult to sort of climb our way back out of that. So how should we practice?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So when you try to meditate and trying to find where the me or self I is, whether you are trying to do whatever different reasoning, logic, different way of analyzing, you do it and come to find that there is no truly or inherently existing self, and you meditate on that. But then you say, then after that, after meditating on that emptiness part, then again, we cannot deny the existence of self. Even when we analyze, we cannot find it within aggregate or outside of aggregate, either one with aggregate, separate from the aggregate, but at the same time, we cannot deny there is no self because we experience, because there's a self that need to eat, that need to sleep, that need to go to work, that is practicing. That is a direct experience. That is a direct experience. There is something, there's a direct experience. You cannot deny that direct experience. And so there is something there, there's some self there. You cannot deny there's no self. So then, but when you analyze, you cannot find, then how is the self? What is that self? How does self exist? And then there is self that is merely imputed on the basis of those aggregates. So then you see there is a self, but there is self only on the basis of merely imputed on the basis of aggregates. And so then when you have that, then you don't fall into nihilism. So at the end of the meditation, then you do that one, First you go and do the negations, meditations, negating the self that does not exist, the truly existence through whatever different reasoning logic you use, analysis, and then try to stay in that emptiness state as much strong, and then you do that. But at the same time, even though I cannot find it, but that doesn't mean there's no self, because it goes against that experience. There must be self, there should be self. So then how does that self exist? And then there is a self that is merely imputed on the basis of that. And then that is how the self exists. And so that is the dependent arisings. And so through that, then you meditate that. And so then I think that might be able to help to do that, to come out of that nihilism. Yeah.
Okay, we have a lot of thank yous in here, but there is one other question from Kurt. Hi, Geshe. My sister is suffering with many extreme losses. She looks after injured wildlife and has a tiny heart. She is asking me for a book to read about Buddhism. I feel a great responsibility to give her a good answer, being just a layperson. Do you have a recommendation?
I think maybe some of you might have, because unfortunately, I don't read so much English books. I'm still kind of old-fashioned, reading more kind of old classical Tibetan texts, and sometimes so I don't read so much English books, or even Buddhism, which is written in English, and also it's not my first language. And so sometimes I don't have so much knowledge what books are available, but I think, I don't know, maybe some of you might have better suggestion, if anyone have any suggestions,
There's a book, Geshe and Kurt, by Lama Zopa on animal liberation. I don't know if that's too much about Buddhist practice, but it talks about how to care for animals, and it's really beautiful. It has fun cartoon illustrations.
Okay, there is one suggestion that to think about, and whether Curtis will feel that is suitable for her sister or not. So you can think about that,
Yeah, Buddhism in a nutshell is great for kind of just a general overview of Buddhist practice and philosophy. And Kurt, you can write to me. I have copies of lots of stuff, in our bookstore. So I'd be happy to send you something if need be.
One other thing might be, I think for new people, it's because becoming your own therapy, I think that is one great book. It's a very, it's small, but I think it really give the essence. So that could be one of the book. And I don't know, for her, maybe it might be a help about if there's a book about, about compassions, but not as, too emotional, that is what, when people care about animal, others who have that, and they could be overwhelmed by the suffering and pain because they are too emotionally too involved, So because the compassion that we are trying to develop through the practice is not that kind of emotional where you become drained and overwhelmed by the emotions, You don't allow that emotion to take over, and that kind of where you cannot function well, Otherwise, all the bodhisattvas will be not being able to function, They will be too overwhelmed by so much suffering and pain that so I think if there is, I don't know exactly where it's if there are any books that kind of that so because that can be helpful, where we try to be compassionate, kind, caring, and trying to develop that loving compassion, caring, that, but at the same time, trying to build up that compassion from the state of understanding and wisdom, so that you don't become overwhelmed and become too emotional, and then you take too much other suffering on yourself by being too emotional, and then it becomes very hard. Then it kind of, it can become very overwhelming and all of that. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't see any other questions in there. It looks like just a lot of thank yous to you, Geshe.
Okay, so then we do the dedications.
Yes. And I just want to mention really quick, because I had a couple direct questions in the chat. I will definitely be, once I get all these recordings compiled, I will send them out to you. I will send links to you so that you have them, along with a couple other little things. So just watch for that in the next week or so. And if you don't see it, maybe check your spam. If you still don't see it, let me know, and I will make sure you get it. So.
And again, Geshe, I want to thank you. And this conversation, if you'd like continue on emptiness with next month, it would be wonderful if everyone could join us. There is no cost for it because we are not a center. You would just be able to devote Dana to Geshe. So thank you.
Thank you, Nina. That's great. Yeah. And Geshe, big thank you from Milarepa Center. We miss you. It was so fun to have you this past fall. I hope we can do that again. And yeah, okay.
Thank you, Geshe.
Okay, so we do the dedications.
Okay.
Due to the merits of this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhichitta that is not arising, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Sammanbhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all this merit in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtues with the dedication placed as the best by the victorious one, thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform good works. I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for essential teachings of perfect pure Losang Thapa to shine forever. Kari Rave Korve Shengam De Pendang Dewa Malu Chungwe Ne 제레 생활 텐제 자소에 샤베 시테 파도 텐조지 도조 정신 정근 자외 진정 배외 군소 도벌제 조선 그의 레모토도 나서도 제군도 샤텐쇼.
Did you want to do Shanti Deva?
No, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your time, precious time, and patience.